Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining in another week. Have a great show planned for you today. Later on the show, I have with me Jay Frey, who is the chair of the Wheeling 250th anniversary celebration. We're talking about all the events that are planned for this year to make that celebration happen. But first, we'll talk about some of our usual features. I'm going to start off in Charleston. Some big events happening there. First of all, Wheeling native Amy Schuler Goodwin sworn in this week as the first ever female mayor of the city of Charleston. And hard to believe here we are in 2019 and first ever female mayor in Charleston, but I think it's big happenings and it'll bring a lot of excitement. You know, she brings a background of having been tourism commissioner and other state jobs to the position, and of course her husband Booth had run for governor in 2016, and you know, I think Amy will bring a lot of change there. I think she'll push people to think in a different way a little bit. She'll bring a lot of energy to that position, and of course her family's been around politics for a long time. Her grandmother Thays Blatnick was a state senator here in the 1st Senatorial District, and so really good to see Amy in that position and want to wish her all the best of luck, and I know she'll do a fantastic job there. And speaking of Charleston and people in office, Governor Jim Justice this week announcing that he will run for re-election in 2020. A little bit of a surprise to some people that maybe that he announced this soon, and maybe even more of a surprise as to how it was announced. An email or blast going out from the statewide Republican committee from the party saying that there'd be a special campaign announcement from Governor Justice, and many people took that to be basically an endorsement of him for the 2020 election. That didn't sit well with some of the folks in the party. I mean, one county executive chair said, hey, this isn't the way we do this. There should be primaries, and whoever comes out of the primary, then we support that person. We don't choose sides beforehand. So interesting to see, because a couple of people have already said they're going to run for the Republican nomination. And of course, on the Democratic side, you know, Stephen Smith kind of started going around the state in December and maybe late November, and had his official launch to his campaign for the Democratic nomination for governor this past week as well, down in Matewan where the Cold War started. And you know, he's a big believer in working families. He started an organization about 6 years ago called West Virginia Healthy Kids and Families, and as part of that organization, he tried to make sure that kids have meals that don't have them, make sure that there's health insurance for people, help people get jobs that don't have them, and really believes in the working family. And I think a lot of folks are going to get behind him. I think particularly perhaps the teachers and unions are going to get behind Stephen Smith. First-time political candidate, but a lot of energy, great ideas, well-educated, Harvard education, was born in West Virginia, grew up here for a number of years before his family moved away, and then he came back. And I think he's going to be a candidate to be reckoned with and somebody to keep an eye on. So we'll continue to watch that as we go forward here throughout this year. But speaking of the teachers that you know, had a big effect on the 2018 election, I think that something to keep an eye on is that the West Virginia legislative session started this week, and a number of the folks that the teachers helped to elect are now in office. Bill Ehlenfeld here in the 1st Senatorial District, now down in Charleston as a state senator. Of course, Sean Fluharty returning. Randy Swartzmiller from Hancock County after a couple years off, back in the legislature. Lisa Zukoff in Marshall County. So some folks that the teachers and school service personnel helped to get elected. Now we'll see what can happen down there. Democrats still in the minority, Republicans still control, but some different folks in leadership. We'll see what happens, you know, in regard to that. And then we'll also see how active the teachers and school personnel are this legislative session. Of course, very active last year with the strike or work stoppage, and now still some things to be fixed for them. You know, they got a pay raise, but still PEIA, no solution to that yet, and it's really important to the teachers, their benefits, and you know, I've said time and time again, our teachers and school service personnel around our kids every day spend more hours around them than we do sometimes as parents. We need to make sure these folks are taken care of. We need to make sure they're well paid so that we are pushing our education forward here in the state of West Virginia. That's where it starts in terms of if we have good, well-educated workforce, then we can bring good jobs here. So I hope that there's a lot done to fix that PEIA and do the right thing so that we can have a good education system here throughout the state of West Virginia. I'll give a legal tip this week. Haven't done that in a while, and I thought I would do that, and that's drive reasonably for the conditions. You know, a lot of times people think, okay, you see the speed limit is, say on the interstate, 55 or 65, whatever it is, a certain portion of the roads, and think, well, I can go that fast. Well, if it's snowing out and the roads are bad or icy or slippery, then you shouldn't drive that fast. I mean, the law is that you need to drive reasonably for conditions. That's supposed to be the speed limit, meaning the upper limit. You should drive slower than that when it's bad out. I've seen so many times in my legal career where accidents happen because people are driving too fast for the conditions. I had a case last year where an ambulance was going too fast for the conditions. It wasn't an emergency situation. The flashers and lights and things weren't on, but caused a very severe accident where a couple of people lost their lives and another person injured, and really bad situation. But have seen that with vehicles, seen it with tractor trailers. Slow down, during the winter months, especially if it's icy or wet in any way out. You could save your life, the life of somebody in your car, or the life of somebody else on the roadway. So be careful with what you're doing out there, and that is the law. You need to drive reasonably for the conditions. Give you a quote here this week as well. NFL playoffs are underway. Vince Lombardi, one of the most famous coaches ever, won a couple Super Bowls, and when the Super Bowl was in its infancy. And I always thought he was one of the coaches who I really enjoy looking at the things that they said over the years, some of the famous quotes. And he said, "Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence." And I like that one a lot, because I always say, like, I'm not perfect. I can't, I want to strive to be, but I can't be. But I never saw this quote from him. But I like that if we chase perfection, if we try to be, then we can still be excellent. So that's something we should all strive for. And I think that's a great quote by him, because you're never going to be perfect, no matter how hard you may try. But you can be excellent. So good quote there by Vince Lombardi. We need to take a break. When I come back, I'll have my guest with me this week. That's Jay Frey, who's the chair of the Wheeling 250th Anniversary Committee. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
Looks like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when we have a guest with us here, and this week's no different. My guest this week is Jay Frey, who is the chair of Wheeling's 250th Anniversary Celebration. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So 250 years, when you really think about that, dating back to 1769, before our nation was even in existence, and was the city of Wheeling. Hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. It's quite a milestone. And you're right to point out that the United States hadn't even been formed. And Wheeling was a very strategically important outpost in that period of time. And in fact, played a pretty important military role as being the furthest outpost on the western frontier. There was really nothing beyond Wheeling in the 18th century. And I think that tends to get lost a little bit, because Wheeling had such a profound role in statehood and the Civil War that gets a lot of attention. But the colonial era, which has been just as important in terms of history, tends to be overshadowed a little bit by that.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, in the importance of the city of Wheeling with the Civil War period is something that even in my classes growing up in school here, I mean, that's what was talked about more. Right. I remember a little bit about the Revolutionary War period, things of that nature, but not a whole lot. So yeah, very interesting. And I think this will bring some attention to it this year.
Indeed, it already has, I think. There's been a lot of interest in the colonial period generated, and a lot of our programming is going to reflect that. So to talk a little bit about that, if your viewers would like to know where's the go-to source for information about how Wheeling's 250th is going to be observed, all of our programs and events are posted on our website, and the address for that is Wheeling250, that's 250.net.
That's pretty easy.
It's up and live. We just had a big event this past weekend, which was the 12th night costume ball, which was the kickoff event up at Glessner Auditorium at Ogilby Park. We had a sellout crowd, 220 people attended. I would estimate about 80% of them dressed in costumes from whatever period they wanted, from 1769 through to the present.
I saw a lot of them on Facebook.
Yes.
They were, it was interesting because you had people, from the Revolutionary War period. Then I saw people dressed up for like the 1980s.
Yep.
It's pretty interesting.
It was a very fun evening and a lot of laughter about how imaginative the guests were. And I think if I had to put my finger on why it was so much fun, it's because people got creative.
Yeah.
And they really embraced the concept of a costume ball. So
how did you get involved in this type of thing with the Wheeling 250th? You must have an interest in the history of
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sort of all roads led to Rome when it came to the Wheeling 250. I was asked by Mayor Elliott if I would chair a Wheeling 250 committee and help him put such a group together. So I was commissioned by City Council on February 20th last year, and we had our first committee meeting the next week.
Yeah, wow.
We have a group of over 30 very committed volunteers who are passionate about history, and they represent a very wide and broad range of organizations and affiliations. And it's a great, I like to say, I'm an average conductor with a virtuoso orchestra.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, we were talking earlier. You were born and raised here in Wheeling, then moved away for after college for a number of years, and then have been back now. And I think you said 45 years you were gone.
Yeah,
long time. What brought you back, and then what changes have you seen from the time when you were a kid to now, and what do you think the future holds for Wheeling?
It's a good question. Well, I left to go to college, and because of employment, really wasn't back here after that for literally 45 years. I did come back to the Pittsburgh area in 2010 to take a position at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh Foundation, where I was vice president. But I moved back here to Wheeling as I was still working in Pittsburgh, so I was commuting for a bit of time. I wasn't completely absent for those 45 years because my mother and father were here until they passed away in 2011. And another motivation for coming back was to be nearer to them as they were aging.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk all about the events that are planned to make this 250th celebration happen. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
You earned it. Let us help you save it. Belmont Savings Bank. Focused on your future.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists. DeNoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Jay Frey, who's the chair of Wheeling's 250th anniversary celebration. He's the head of that committee, and we're talking about you coming back here and some of the things that you like. I'm sure you're going to build off some of the things you think are important to Wheeling and things of that nature.
Sure. You asked me what I remember and find somewhat different. I remember at Christmas time in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, there were so many people shopping downtown that they wouldn't all fit on the sidewalk.
I've seen
People were
pictures,
walking in the street. I remember that. I don't think we're quite there yet again, but what I see happening in terms of a real resurgence in the downtown as well as in the entire community is great to see. And I think in terms of timing, our 250th anniversary couldn't really be happening at a more promising time. And that really gives us some wings. And let me speak a little bit, if I could, about some upcoming events.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear
that
about
are near
that.
term. Again, our website, wheeling250.net, is the place to find all this out. But every first Tuesday of the month, the Lunch with Books program at the Ohio County Public Library is devoting a program to some aspect of Wheeling's history. We just had the first one yesterday, which was a really interesting presentation where Travis Henline took us through 16,000 years of Native American history in this local area in the space of an hour.
Wow.
And it was fascinating. He's doing a similar program actually Saturday at 1 o'clock in the auditorium of the public library for the West Wheeling Area Genealogical Society. They're doing a monthly series on the first families in Wheeling, and Travis is starting with the Native Americans. The Civil War Roundtable is doing monthly programs on Wheeling's role in the Civil War, also at the library on Mondays at 6:30 monthly. The first one is the 28th of January. Coming up more quickly is on January 14th, our first arts program will be offered. It will be on display at the atrium of the Federal Courthouse on Chaplin Street. You need a photo ID to enter, and it is an exhibit of portraits taken by the world-class Wheeling photographer George Kossuth. People of my generation remember him slightly. People of your generation may not even know who he is, but he literally was a world-class portrait photographer.
Is that right?
The exhibition will focus on famous musicians who came through Wheeling, whose photographs he took. There'll be 25 of them. And I'm really excited about that. That's all through the auspices of the Museums of Ogilvy Institute.
And so those things will happen during the month of January. Then this thing's going to go, this celebration is going the whole year, I guess.
Yep.
And so what other big things are planned throughout the year here?
I'm particularly excited about the 170th anniversary of the construction of the Wheeling Suspension Bridge. So we're going to have a 170th birthday party on Saturday, June 22nd at the Heritage Port. And we're working on getting a sternwheeler here so people can ride the appropriate boat under the bridge. We're going to have a plein air activity for people who would like to paint the bridge and the paddle wheeler, live music, food, storytelling. There's a really interesting story about the bridge blowing down in 1854 and how it was rebuilt in 6 weeks' time. And Rich Nomblick is going to do the storytelling on that topic. So it should be really fun. And we're having a parade.
Oh, wow. That'll be down there too?
A parade on the 7th of September with the West Virginia Mountaineer Band in the lead.
Oh, people will really enjoy that.
I think
the
so,
band's
too.
always so much fun to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, the waterfront's becomes such an important part of Wheeling once again, you know, with the, it seems like almost every weekend in the summer there's something going on down at Heritage Port. And, you know, we really, I think there's been an effort being made to return to the river and the riverfront being an important part of what's going on in Wheeling.
You have that exactly right. The genesis of that was really Harry Ham, the newspaper editor. He wrote a plan for Wheeling, and he believed very passionately that Wheeling was Wheeling because of the river, and that we needed to reorient our face to the river. And when the wharf parking lot came down, that happened. And then Heritage Port was created by Wheeling Heritage. And that's been a game changer. And it gives us a way to relate to the river, which has been so important to our history. So it's river, road, and rail that made Wheeling, and all of those aspects are being celebrated in 2019.
Well, I really wish you and your entire committee a lot of luck with what you're doing. I appreciate that you're bringing this attention to the city of Wheeling and putting these events on, because I think it'll be a fantastic year to really celebrate the history of Wheeling and to really teach some people that don't know the history of Wheeling a little bit more about it.
Right. Well, that's what it's all about, but it's really about having fun and celebrating not only our past, but our future. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak about it.
Thank you for being here today. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking sports. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
We're Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you. We've got it down to a science, an absolute state of art. We do it all, restoration, cleaning, and reconstruction. When disaster strikes, just pick up the phone. We're Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and we'll start with college football and the college football playoff. Clemson with a dominant performance over Alabama in the national championship game. Really, I think shocking just about everybody. Even people that thought Clemson would win, nobody thought 28-point blowout over Alabama. And can Notre Dame get some love now? My alma mater, everybody's been, kind of, banging them for a week and a half here now, but maybe Notre Dame was a little better than people thought, because look what Clemson did to Alabama. And really Notre Dame had that second quarter, toward the end of the second quarter, that really kind of where things collapsed. But you look at the Alabama-Clemson game, and I think Alabama just really failed to send any type of pressure at Trevor Lawrence at all. The freshman quarterback for Clemson, I kept saying week after week on this show, eventually a freshman's going to make some mistakes. Eventually a freshman's going to make some mistakes. He never did. But to be quite honest, he didn't get any pressure sent at him. Alabama rushed forward just about the entire game. I saw maybe once or twice where they sent a fifth guy, but I think with a young guy like that, you got to make him nervous, even if you're not getting to him all the time. Make that ball come out of his hands a little bit quicker, maybe just a little bit different. Of course, receivers were making plays all over the place, but I felt there was a real mismatch in the game that I just didn't anticipate, which was the game plan between Alabama's offensive coordinator, Mike Locksley, and Clemson's defensive coordinator, Brent Venables. Venables been at Clemson for a number of years now, I think the highest paid coordinator in the country, and just does a fantastic job. Locksley, his first year as offensive coordinator at Alabama, he's now going to be the Maryland head coach. And you look at his prior head coaching record, which was at New Mexico, and he was something like 2-26 or something along those lines. And I look at it and say, man, I don't know why Maryland's hiring him into that job. I just feel like he really doesn't have the background and credentials to be the Maryland head coach. He was the interim coach there when Randy Edsall was let go, and so I think that and they did okay. And so I think people think, oh, let's bring him back. I'm just not seeing it. And, I think that's a lot of what led to that game. You saw Alabama get down into the red zone of Clemson a number of times. They couldn't punch it in. Despite all the offensive firepower they have, of course, they didn't help themselves with the interceptions. And I thought, again, Venables did a great job. On the interception early in the game, you don't like to see your quarterback throw an interception, pick six right to start the game off. But I felt like the Alabama receivers were too bunched together. I feel like somebody ran a little bit of the wrong route. But then later on, Tua misread the coverage. He thought that the corner was going to sink at 10, 15 yards. Instead, he ran down the field. Just looked like he was throwing the ball to him practically. So Alabama, some bad luck there. But things kind of snowballed. But I just feel like Clemson really had the better game plan, and I thought Alabama's pride and ego got a little bit in the way. I think they thought they were just going to come in and roll over Clemson because they've been so good all year, and not the case. So in the final rankings, Clemson number 1, Alabama number 2, Ohio State finishes 3rd, Oklahoma 4th, and Notre Dame 5th. And I'm biased. I'm a Notre Dame grad, but I felt like Notre Dame should not have been 5th, especially after seeing what Clemson did to Alabama. I thought Notre Dame should have stayed pat at 3rd. I don't know how you put an Ohio State team at 3rd, who really Purdue did to Ohio State what Clemson did to Alabama. A 28 at some point loss there to Purdue, who was just a run-of-the-mill team in the Big Ten. Maybe some Urban Meyer uplifting, but I think the big thing was people had a week to sit there and say, oh, Notre Dame must not have been any good. They got beat this bad by Clemson. So that sat in for a week before people got to realize, oh, maybe Clemson's just that good. So a little disappointed with where Notre Dame finished, but still, I think for the most part the AP voters got it right. And of course, my guess the last 2 weeks, Mitch Vingle had Clemson number 1 in his preseason poll. He was still an AP poll voter at the time when the season started. He had Clemson number 1 in his preseason poll, Alabama number 2. He got that right, so congratulations to Mitch on having that before the season started. I felt pretty good about my playoff picks. I had Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame in the playoff. I also had West Virginia instead of Oklahoma, but I just had the wrong Big 12 team. Let's turn to the NFL. You know, playoffs last week, speaking of hitting things, I hit 3 out of 4 there. I gave you my picks last week, including 2 road wins by the Chargers over the Ravens and the Colts over the Texans. Of course, I also had the Cowboys beating Seattle, and they took care of the Seahawks. But the one I missed on was the Chicago Bears. Of course, they had a chance to win. Kicker let them down again, goes off the upright, then off the crossbar, and then bounces back. I felt really bad for him. I mean, it's a tough way to lose. I mean, there's so many things that happen during the course of a football game or any sporting event, but the things that happen at the end are the ones we remember. Those are the ones that are magnified. And, of course, you know, the kicker's out there by himself. You don't see other plays in the game where a lineman misses a block, and that's why you get a negative rushing play or a sack or things like that. But, you know, my wife Stacy always says never leave the game in the hands of the kicker, and she was right once again. She's usually right. I should come to realize that. But, you know, they left the game in the hands of the kicker, and it didn't work out so well for them. So the Eagles move on to this week's playoffs game. So let's set out this week's NFL playoff games. On Saturday, first of all, 4:35, the Colts at the Chiefs. That game will be on NBC, and I think the luck runs out this time. I said last week, you know, Andrew Luck coming off injuries, and he's playing so well, but the Chiefs are rested. They've got all that offensive firepower, guys like Mahomes and Kelsey and Hill. Just too many weapons. I think the Chiefs win that one. Then at 8:15, the Cowboys, the Rams over on Fox. Interesting matchup there. I mean, the Rams, though, fast, talented. Cowboys, America's team. There's going to be a lot of attention on this game, but I think just too much skill by the Rams, and I'll take Los Angeles in that one. Then on Sunday, 1:05, right here on CBS on WTRF, Chargers at the Patriots. You know, I keep saying, is this Phillip Rivers' year? And I mean, it's been a great year for him, but too tough to win in Foxborough. I mean, the Patriots are just so good at home. Brady and Belichick with all that experience, I think the Patriots advance. Then at 4:40 on Sunday, the Eagles at the Saints. You know, the Eagles just got by, of course, when the Bears missed that kick. I think it's too tough to repeat in the NFL. Just defending that NFL Super Bowl title is too hard. New Orleans will be loud. Drew Brees is so good. I just think too much there. I think the 1 and 2 seeds advance in both conferences. Doesn't happen real often, but I think it happens. Those teams coming off the byes will advance. The Saints win that one. Last thing I want to talk about today. The AP Male Athlete of the Year award was announced recently, and LeBron James got it. And I think very deserving, not just for his athletic accomplishments, but also starting a school for underprivileged children, all the things he's done for his community, et cetera. But I want to talk about who came in 5th in that award for AP Male Athlete of the Year, and that was Triple Crown winner Justify. And I saw that and I just scratched my head. I'm like, AP Male Athlete of the Year? This is an animal we're talking about. I like animals, don't get me wrong. But, you know, do we give it to a cheetah for being the fastest, you know, male in the world? Do we give it to a dolphin for being the best swimmer? I mean, it justifies 5th. I mean, it kind of minimizes the role of the jockey who's riding the horse. It kind of minimizes the role of the trainer. I just don't think that it should happen. I mean, I remember back, you know, a number of years ago when they were announcing the greatest athletes of the 20th century, and they were talking about Secretariat. I'm like, it's a horse. And we had this debate at lunch when I was in law school. And, you know, I think it's kind of crazy. I think the AP voters get it wrong when they put these horses in, including the male athletes. So glad LeBron James got it. Congratulations to him. But let's get the animals out of the equation for this voting. That's all the time we have this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time on The Jamie Bordas Show.